what is this whole rig I've got going on here, including the back? Why would you want to use this? Because most people probably wouldn't. You may be looking at this and wondering, well, I actually might have a use for that. Let's talk about this whole setup we've got going on right here. I'm going to take this bit off because I don't think we need it for most of the video. Now, I've actually been working with this gear for quite a few months now, so if this video does seem all over the place, it's because it is. But let's jump back to summer and why I started wanting to use something like this.
The whole idea I was interested in a setup like this is I'm using a lot of things these days that require separate batteries. There's a lot of things that have separate chargers. This, for me, allows me to essentially power everything off of one of these V-mount batteries if I wanted to. Now, I have two on here just to kind of balance it out a little bit, but you could technically go off of one V-mount battery if you want. Both of these have D-tap outs on them. I can use the D-taps to power the monitors, power the camera, and actually power the gimbal itself as well. This is actually designed for the RS2 or the RS3 Pro, but you could put an RS3 on it as well if you wanted to, with the big thing that's not going to work being this little device right here. Now, this is a wireless handle. This allows you to control the gimbal wirelessly. A little bit on the side just here connects directly to the gimbal, and then that communicates with this. The big problem I have with this is the battery life is shockingly bad. This was charged when I went to use it and I forgot to turn it off. My drive back was only 40 minutes. That lasted maybe 2.5 hours tops. Now, as well as having the power on there, I can of course mount a monitor to the top, and it's really nice to have the monitor right here in front of my eyes instead of having to look down at the screen. So if I'm kind of holding it like this, I can just look directly at the monitor right in my face there, which is really nice. Legs on the bottom there is really good. You can just pop it down wherever you are, on the ground, on a table, whatever you need to put it on to rest it. If you need a break from it or whatever, the legs there, really, really handy. The big problem, the big thing that I realized very quickly with this is a two-handed setup. The problem lies when you need to start changing settings, which for real estate, when I was shooting, happens very frequently. Rooms have different lighting going from outside to inside. So I figured out pretty fast that there's no easy way to change the settings. So I had to do this a lot, which is not very convenient. So this isn't going to be very good for anything that involves setting changes, moving from different situations, from like bright to dark, that kind of thing. So not going to be good for that. If it's not going to be changing, then yeah, you might like it. You can break it down, put it in a bag, but it is time consuming to put together, to attach everything here. This is really a setup that you are going to want to build prior to turning up whatever it is that you're shooting. You can literally just turn it on and you're good to go. And that is one thing I do like about this. Transporting a gimbal in general isn't the easiest thing in the world. You can just kind of slide that in the space, at least in the back of my truck, or you can do the same thing in a car, in front of the back seats, and it just fits in there quite nicely. Now, when I actually got this part here, where the gimbal attaches, was actually upside down, which is another complete way that you can set this up if you wanted to, have a camera hanging down from the top instead. You're kind of in underslung or briefcase mode when you're doing it that way. I just prefer it on the bottom here, just the way I like to use it. You can definitely put bigger setups on this as well. Like if you wanted to put the monitor on top here or have a bigger mic on there, I was using the Sennheiser AVX. It's just a little thing that goes on the top. But you could mount a pretty big setup there, especially as the RS3 Pro. It will take a bigger setup if you want to mount it on there. Just bear in mind that the more you mount, the heavier it's going to get.
Now, for shorter shoots, this is actually pretty good, but for longer shoots, it does start to become quite heavy, and especially if you need to change your settings on the fly and you don't want to be doing that knee balance. That's why I started looking at using an easy rig. Now, easy rigs in general are quite expensive, but there are more budget-friendly versions out there. Digital Photo actually makes one of these. I reached out to them, asked them if they wouldn't mind sending it through me to test out, and I used it with this. It's basically a backpack that has foam padding on it here, and then this hooks in to the back here. This all connects up. It comes as two pieces when it comes shipped. On the back here is a little thing that turns and tightens and loosens. If it's heavier, you just turn it this way, like so. Push that lever there, it releases it to allow you to turn it the other way, and then that's what makes it looser. In turn, will support less weight, or will balance with less weight. Just goes on my back like so. And the idea behind this is that instead of the weight being in my arms, it puts all the weight on my back, my shoulders, my lower back. Now I actually have this pre-balanced already, and you pull this down and this little hook here comes up and down. Pop this on here like that, and you just literally clip that in. And that's it. It now supports all that weight. Now, when this is properly balanced, you can actually pull this down and pull it back up again, and it will stay in place. If it's not properly balanced, this will fall to the ground. You set it up how you want it, but that right there is properly balanced. And it does a really good job of taking the weight off of this setup. You can loosen this as well, which adjusts how far forwards or backwards this goes too. As a product, that's pretty much it. It doesn't do anything else. And it does its job pretty well. Now, a lot of people are wondering, is this actually gonna make my shots smoother? No, not in any way. It won't help with that whatsoever. I tried this out with Garrett for some sports, and if you're running with a setup like this, it's too much. It's easier just to use the gimbal instead of everything we've got going on. Now the hook vest, if you're using it for something like sports, it's gonna make it worse. You're gonna get more up and down movement because there's gonna be a bounce. You kind of wanna hold on to this more to get less of that bounce, which really defeats the whole purpose of using the hook vest in the first place. It's better for more slower paced style shots, like real estate. It's definitely overkill. You're not gonna wanna use this for more discreet jobs. Now, a couple of complaints. After a while of using it, you do feel it in your lower back. This does move around quite freely. I've had it hit things, nothing of importance or that got damaged, but it will move around, so know that. Hear that? That's one of my complaints with it. It is creaky in certain situations, not all the time. It didn't do it when I first got it, so I'm sure I could oil it and it would be better. Right, so the bit that I know you all care about more than anything else. What do we have going on here? What is in this whole setup? Now, I've gone through different variations of this setup here in terms of different batteries, different ways to mount everything, but in general, this is pretty much how I use it now. I've got the RS3 Pro on here right now. It will work with other setups. Just know that you won't be able to use that wireless handle there if you wanted to. I've got a Portkeys P6 monitor on here. I love this monitor because it's small, it's thin, it's got tiny little bezels on there. I can load a lot on it. And that is actually powered by a Sony NP style battery. But as I said earlier, too many batteries these days. So I like to have something that mounts or that connects via DTAP. So I'm actually using one of these DTAP to basically Sony NP battery adapters that connects to the back of the Portkeys P6, and then that gets me my power from my V-mount battery. The V-mount battery is actually connected via a little tiny mount that is from SmallRig. This is just a clamp that screws directly to the ring, and it has a V-mount plate on it that the battery connects to. That just unclips like that. The DTAP comes undone, and that is one of the V-mount batteries that I'm using. This is a GDU one, Global Dynamics United, aka red. Just so happens that it is a red battery. You don't have to use these ones. Any V-mount batteries will do. Again, another little clamp from SmallRig right there with a little friction arm that's going directly into the side of the Portkeys P6. One of the reasons I like the P6 as well, another reason, is that it has multiple mounting points on there and it flips its orientation. So if it knows it's the other way up, it flips the screen for you. Some monitors don't do that. I've been using the Sennheiser AVX mic on top of there, but I've also used the DJI mic. It will balance with the FX3 top handle mic on there if you wanted to use that too. In general, you want to use a slightly longer HDMI cable. I was previously using this one from SmallRig, pretty thin, flexible cable, but Gerald just gave me some of his newer HDMI cables, the Mark II ones, which now support 4K 60 and like all the different ways that 4K 60 can be used. They're also slightly longer. You want a longer cable because you're obviously going to be moving the gimbal about. You don't at any point want it to become tight, which then impedes the gimbal's ability. It's better to have a looser cable in general. Down the bottom right here, you got a little Anton Bauer battery here. Again, just mounted with whatever I had laying around that would attach to this. Now this one is actually from Falcam. It's their tiny little mounting system. Caleb Pike did a whole video on. You can use whatever you want. You don't need to use anything specific. But the reason I'm using the Anton Bauer batteries is because it gives me a real-time indication when everything is drawing power from this, how much longer this thing is gonna last. DTAP on here, USB-A on here, and then this connects directly into the DTAP, and then that powers the gimbal via, I don't know what this special cable is on here that it's called. This can power in and then it powers out as well to power other things if you wanted it to, but this little setup right here, you need this to work with the SmallRig ring. Something to think about as well when using a setup like this, you can power via a dummy battery and DTAP from whatever power solution you're using, but you need to use something that's long and doesn't use a coiled cable where it's going to be tight. You want a looser cable in general because anything that's going to, much like how I said with an HDMI cable there, anything that's going to cause additional tension on the gimbal is going to stop it from working properly. So if you're going to use a dummy battery, don't use a coiled tight cable. Use a cable that is a lot looser. That's just going to allow you to let the gimbal work properly. I think that is everything. So definitely an overkill setup. Not everyone's going to need this for every situation, but if you find yourself wanting something like this, I'll list all the parts below for you to check out. All the links will be there. That's it. Thank you to SmallRig. Thank you to Digital Photo for sending through all the parts for this. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.